The problem with Sierra Leone is not so much with policies, but with implementation. We all know that there are a whole host of policies on mining, on education, on whatever you have, and these are accompanied by pieces of legislation. The problem really is, having got these policies, do we actually implement them? And I think it's a problem of it's a combination of various things. It's a combination of problems of capacity and problems of not having the right people to do the job, and also a problem of political will. I believe that the capacity of ministries, departments, and agencies should be improved upon to be able to carry out whatever are the dictates of these policies. I also believe that the buck stops with the person who is in charge. The president should appoint the right people in charge of implementing these policies in terms of who he puts in the ministries, departments, and agencies. We can give excuses here and there, but I believe that if we were to stop right now and not even add to the policies, we could just improve things in this country. The political will needs to be there. I've seen in areas whereby the policy is very clear and it states very clearly what should be done. The legislation is there to be able to implement some of these policies, but the political will is just not there. And this relates to issues like law and order, it relates to issues like mining, it relates to issues like education, and we always have sacred cows. I don't believe in the theory of sacred cows. I believe you should put people in there. The buck stops with the president. If the president cannot make that decision, then it's his fault. If you have the wrong people in there, you can always change them. There are lots of competent Sierra Leoneans. Policies are one thing, but implementation, the political will to implement them, is what I will push for in the Keili presidency. You know, some people have asked what's the biggest problem we have in Sierra Leone. I would think, without comparison, that is the matter of youth unemployment. When you consider that youths between the ages of 15 and 35, those constitute over a third of the population, and when you consider those are the people who are unemployed, and when you consider that a lot of the youths have nothing else to do, they roam the streets with aspirations of their own, but these cannot be realized because of government policy. It's a big problem. If we don't address this issue, it's going to lead us back to a war. It may not be like the last war we had, but I consider the matter of youth engagement as a national issue that needs to be addressed with urgency. It all comes down to issues of how do we address the matter of youth education. You have educated youths who've been to college and cannot get jobs. You've got the others who haven't even got the opportunity to acquire that level of education. All of these need aspirations that need to be addressed. As far as I'm concerned with the matter of educated youths, I think we need to address the issue of education. We have a shortage of vocational schools in this country. We need TVET educational schools to be able to educate those kids who could not go far with tertiary education, academic courses in tertiary education, but at the same time could do well with vocational education. We have the issues of youths again who are unemployed that haven't really gone far with education. How do you engage them in pursuits like agriculture, in industry, in entrepreneurial skills? I believe you need to have a youth empowerment scheme. As far as educated youths are concerned, we are the only country in the sub-region that hasn't got a national youth corps. You need to integrate these kids into a national youth corps so that they can go and work in other areas of the country. You need also, with kids that are educated, to be able to match their educational skills to what is available in the job market. What jobs are they going to do in industry, in commerce, in various areas? This is one thing that we haven't done. If we do not address the matter of youth education, pay attention to this, stop using these kids as cannon fodder for our political pursuits, is going to be bad for this country. I think that this matter can be addressed. It's not very difficult. There are other countries that have set about addressing them. We have to address them in a concerted way, and it's got to be linked with other policies in other areas, because whatever you're looking at, whether it's in agriculture or in education or in commerce or in finance, you've got to think about these youths. And this is our future as Sierra Leoneans. We have to address them. Education is the bedrock of our society. No society will develop if its people are not educated. But our educational system is in the doldrums. I recall years ago when we were in secondary school, the infrastructure used to be okay. We used to have teachers, good teachers. We used to have aspirations as what pursuits will get into after school. Nowadays, it's very difficult for these kids. The schools haven't got the infrastructure. We have a shift system, and you've always got to change. Imagine kids going to school just for a few hours. The contract hours are very few. Teachers are not well remunerated. We have a problem of really trying to encourage our teachers to be able to teach these kids. We have a problem of equipment in the schools. We have a problem, in fact, there is a paucity of schools. So as long as you have this kind of problem, it's going to be difficult to educate our kids. You have cheating in exams, you have all kinds of shenanigans carried out by people. We have to not only devote a lion's share of our budget to education, but to take education seriously, both in the primary school and secondary school, and also even tertiary educational level. In the primary school, there is a shortage of primary schools, so you have lots of private schools. In secondary schools, they run shift systems. In the university system, it's very difficult to even incorporate students into certain courses that really would be useful for the development of this country. It's high time we took a real holistic approach to the issue of educating our folks. And when you look at it again, women are disadvantaged in education. That is why a lot of emphasis has to be given to the education of the girl child, because that will bode well for this country in future. So in short, if we do not address our educational system, it's going to tell on all areas. I've been in industry, I've been in commerce, I've seen us employ people who cannot even perform to the basic standards required of them because our educational system is so weak. And this is for a country that used to be called the Athens of West Africa. If we do not address our educational system, we're going to end up with a nation of illiterates. We're not going to be able to tap into the knowledge economy. We're not going to be able to participate in IT skills. We're not going to be able to participate in areas that will bode well for building this country's economy. Education, education, education. You cannot go wrong with education. You know, as far as health is concerned, the recent Ebola crisis has taught us a lot of lessons, that our health system is at best precarious. We saw how our weak health system helped exacerbate the Ebola situation. There is a paucity of clinics at the peripheral level. There is a paucity of staff, skilled medical staff that you could have. We have a dearth of equipment in our hospitals. The system is just not there. So when we had this Ebola crisis, it hit us very, very hard, and we had to get help from outside. If you watch what is happening with our health system, you go to hospitals without drugs. You go in, there are very few specialists in this country. In some of the professions like surgery and gynecology and so on, most of the specialists are in their 50s and 60s. We need to train more specialists. We need to take education down to the village level, take health down to the village level. And this needs to be taken very seriously. If we don't give the lion's share of our budget to health, it's going to affect us. The Abuja Declaration requires that we spend 15% of our earnings, of our budget on health. What we're spending now is far short of that, and there's so much corruption in the system. I believe we need to be practical about it. We need to be practical about giving incentives also to health workers to be able to work in remote environments. We need to pay our nurses well. We need to pay our doctors well. We need to train specialists. We need to develop district hospitals. We need to develop secondary and tertiary healthcare services at the local level to be able to treat our people. And we need to stamp out corruption in this system. As far as I'm concerned, I think one of the areas where you need the best managers in our health is in our health system. We also need to require that people have some sort of insurance, health insurance scheme. We don't have a health insurance scheme in this country. We had looked at a system whereby we could have a simple insurance scheme in which a group like NACIT could be involved, and individuals could be involved, corporations could be involved as well. Because if we don't insure our people and ensure that health services get down to the last person in the village, it's going to be very difficult in this country. We've seen from the Ebola crisis that human security is very, very paramount, and that is paramount for our development. Any society that doesn't treat its women seriously is a society that's bound to fail. Women comprise 51% of Sierra Leone's population, but they are the ones that suffer the most. They bear the brunt of all the work in rural areas. They are the ones that give childbirth. They are the ones that give birth to children. They are the ones that die at childbirth. They are the ones that work on the farms. They are the ones that look after the children. They are also the ones that actually keep the families going, but yet still they are very disadvantaged. We've had the Gender Acts in this country to look at devolution of estate to women, to look at women's rights in various areas, but this is not being implemented properly. Also, there is a problem of women being represented in decision-making capacities. I'm all in favor of the 30% quota. I believe that it should be legislated. I also believe that we should really empower our women folk. I've seen a lot of women who are parliamentarians, who are decision makers, and these people, if given the opportunity, can perform very well. But we've got to give them a leg up. The rural woman has to be encouraged. We have to have a women's empowerment fund. We need to take these pieces of legislation very seriously and actually implement the pieces of legislation that there are now. We should also look at the appointment of women to governance positions. I mean, if you are to legislate that Parliament should have at least 30% of women, that can be enshrined in the Constitution. Even if it's not enshrined in the Constitution, my government will ensure that we give a leg up to women so that there are lots of women in decision-making capacities, because that's the only way we can develop as in this country. We have to have a sort of affirmative action scheme. If we do not do that, we will wallow in poverty. Women are key to poverty eradication. I lament the fact that this country is so divided, and we need to take the issue of national cohesion very seriously. The country is divided along ethnic lines, along religious lines, along all kinds of lines. And this is not good for our development. When one government gets into power and they control the purse strings of this country, they always try to get people into governance position and top positions that are sort of within their own governance support system, the areas where they come from. Political parties in this country, let's face it, are based along this ethnic divide. I believe that the issue of national cohesion is very, very paramount, and it should be engendered. We should make sure that appointments are based on merit. We should make sure that in whatever decisions we make, we take into consideration that there are many, many more tribes in this country, that this country has many ethnic divisions, and we must try to heal the divide. The only way I think we can do this is not necessarily by legislation, but I think that we need to have, I would certainly call for having a presidential task force on national cohesion. And I will base my appointments on meritocracy. And I will look at all parts of this country. If we do not do that, and any government tries to be very, very partisan in the way it makes the decisions on appointments or development ventures, it's not going to bode well for this country. And all that will happen is another government of another type of inclination will come and try to redress the situation and do the exact opposite. So national cohesion, if we are to develop as a country, is extremely important. I'd like to talk on the issue of decentralization. You know, this country is too centralized in its governance system. Time was, in fact, when they got rid of the local councils and all decisions used to be made at the center. As much as we do have local councils now, a lot of decisions are still made at the center. Local councils are there, they have some degree of administrative authority, but what is lacking is that they need to have the financial resources to be able to make their own decisions. Imagine a case whereby even to be able to get a passport in Bo or Kenema or Makini, you have to travel to Freetown. Things are very, very centralized. Decision making in terms of councils would like to make certain decisions related to health, education, and whatever in their areas, but they are hampered because they lack the financial resources. They make these decisions, but they haven't got the wherewithal. Like our medical services were supposed to be decentralized. A lot of the decisions still come from the central ministry here. Some amount of devolution should have taken place in most of these ministries, but that has not been done. I will ensure that this is done because I have the belief that unless the decision maker is close to the people and he or she is held accountable by those people, is going to result in bad decision making. That's how corruption crops up. I mean, if the Ministry of Lands or the Ministry of Health or Education is supposed to make a decision, it's but right that that decision is made close to the people that are affected. And then they can question those people. There has to be some degree of accountability. If we don't do that in this country, we don't decentralize, have proper fiscal decentralization, have governance structures to work at the local level, that is the councils work, the paramount chieftaincy groups work very well, and they're close to the people and are held accountable, this country is not going forward. I will push for decentralizing the system and having fiscal decentralization. I'll talk about our mineral resources. You often hear that mining contributes up to 20% of our GDP and up to 80% of our export earnings. I've had this ever since I was a small boy. In the 70s, we've heard about this. We've placed a lot of emphasis on our mineral resources. But what have we got to show for it? I was a young engineer in Yengama, and when you go to Yengama now, it's but a poor shadow of its former self. We've been mining diamonds in this country since 1935. We've been mining rutile and bauxite and all kinds of minerals. What have we got to show for it for our development? The basic problem is that we've not been applying the resources we've been having from our minerals into other sectors of the economy to diversify our economy. And now we have another problem. There is so much corruption in the granting of contracts, so much inequity between companies, so much interference into what companies do, so much interference into various issues related to mining contracts, which are supposed to be standard, that we are being fleeced. Various reports have shown that a lot of companies are getting away with murder. And also our local areas are not really being developed, these areas where these minerals come from. I will push for having a standard mining contract. I will also push for developing our local areas. enshrine it in our laws that a certain amount of revenue and from government, from mining, from those mining companies should actually be spent in developing the local areas. I will push for also getting bigger companies come in. Bigger companies that can come in that will not be subject to the vicissitudes of the marketplace like we had recently with African Minerals and London Mining. But that calls for more transparency in your policy making, in your legislation, and in how you run things. And above all, we need to have the information to be able to give these companies that when they are coming in. I will push for strengthening agencies like the National Minerals Agency. And also for the issue of artisanal miners, I do agree that not everybody can be a large-scale miners. There are about 200 to 300,000 people in this country that live off artisanal mining. I will push for empowering these people. They need to diversify into other areas. So we need to look at the issue of alternative livelihoods for these people. So there are lots of things with our minerals, not only with our minerals, but even with our petroleum resources that we need to be looked at. But one of the things that we need to be sure about is that there is transparency in the granting of contracts, and that these contracts are well implemented by these companies, and government has to be in charge. Sierra Leone has lots of people in the diaspora, in the US, in the UK, Central Europe, all over the world. The one thing I noticed about all of these people is that they all yearn to come back home, or even for those who are not ready to come back home yet, they care passionately about the country. You can see Sierra Leoneans' involvement in what is happening in our country at the moment. I've seen a lot of young Sierra Leoneans come back home, start up businesses on their own, or get engaged in some business pursuit, or work for some corporations. And they bring in badly needed skills. That is in addition to what the diaspora and community contributes towards the economy of this country. You send remittances, they keep our people up, especially in the light of this poverty we have in. So you have a lot of say in what is happening in our country. You have a lot of say in our economy. You have a lot of say in the way we do business. But this has not been translated into respect for diaspora and Sierra Leoneans. You don't have the right to vote. I think that is wrong. I would ensure that diaspora and Sierra Leoneans vote. Also, I don't believe in cosmetic solutions. I believe that we should have an agency specifically dealing with diasporan issues. There are the issues of remittances, there are the issues of job skills, there are the issues of various types of things that can help this country. Diaspora and Sierra Leoneans should contribute more towards the development of this country. And it behoves us to have a government that respects these people. They contribute as much as some people here, if not more, in instances. So I don't see why they should not be given the leeway to have a vote in the system and decide on who rules Sierra Leone. I'd like to talk a little bit about leadership. You know, all kinds of people, everybody's coming up and saying, I want to lead Sierra Leone. Well, the thing is, what do we require in a leader? I believe, first of all, that we need to have a leader who has a vision for the country. It's said, without a vision, the people perish. You need to have a vision of where you want to see Sierra Leone in 10, 15, 20 years' time. What are the problems of Sierra Leone? How do you think you can solve them? You also need to have the courage to be able to address so many salient issues. There are so many issues which governments, successive governments, have refused to address because they haven't got the courage to address them, because they think in addressing them they may lose votes. You have to have a leader who has the courage or conviction to be able to make these decisions. In this kind of country, integrity is extremely important. You have to have a leader who has integrity. Where he's worked, has he treated people right? Is he susceptible to corruption? How does he spend money? Does he have the integrity to say, when I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that? Do you have a trust in him? And lastly, I also believe that apart from issues of vision, passion, and integrity, and courage, the person should have a passion passion to say Sierra Leone belongs to all of us. Sierra Leone can be like Singapore. Sierra Leone can rise up from the ashes. I have the passion to be able to change this country. And lastly, I think you have to have trust in that leader. Lots of people wanting to rule Sierra Leone, but who do you trust? Of these leadership traits that I have identified and listed down, do you actually trust Mr. A or Mr. B to be able to have these attributes to be able to change Sierra Leone? Who do you trust with leading this country? I believe that throughout my years of experience in this country, working in both the private and the public sectors, and in all the pursuits I've got engaged in, you can find out that I'm that type of leader that not only has a vision for Sierra Leone, but has a passion, and also has the integrity, and also has the courage to be able to make decisions.